Bobby. Is there a way to test this to see if it's up a little bit higher?
Right here.
All right. Yeah. Last time it was just a little bit quiet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
About 10 seconds.
All
10
right.
seconds. Oh yeah, yes indeed. A little bit of Craig David Heartline here on 107.1 FM, KOYO, your community radio from the south side of Oroville, the foothills, and beyond. And this is where we're going to take a little pause for the calls from the music, as we've been doing. Well, we missed last Friday because I was out. So we're back this Friday, and I'm kind of incognito. I shouldn't be here, but I don't want you guys to miss out on this information. So this is where me and my hostess with the mostest, Mr. Montreal Jamari, we're talking about this new 40 Acres and a Mule. And welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I missed out on the email, man. Brother looking all
Yeah,
sharp.
thank you, sir.
Like they say back in the day, I don't want to touch you because I might cut myself because you're so young. But no, thank you for being here.
Yes,
And
sir.
so how you been since the last time we did?
Very good. Really
Good,
busy, but very good.
Good,
You know,
good.
everything's been going well, and so just continuing to build up the private practice.
Okay, good,
And
good.
so, so I've just been really busy working on that and just trying to get that up and going. So things been going well. How about yourself?
Good, man. I'm working on it, man. You know, it's an everyday thing, and so got a little bit of health problems, but that's okay.
Okay.
I will make it through it.
Yeah, we're
So,
working on that too. We're gonna be
so,
working together.
yes,
you know,
thank you.
So I have some plans for us to do some walking and riding
Yeah.
and things like that, and so that way we can.
You must was at my doctor's appointment yesterday, because that was definitely what my doctor told me yesterday.
Yeah.
He told me you need to, first thing I want you to start doing is just walking.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
anyway, not this ain't about me. This is about us educating our community and then uplifting them as well. So, what we got this week?
Well, we had a great session last week.
Yes, indeed.
And so, right at this time, Bobby, I'd like to give a shout out to all the people who have been very supportive of this particular series and program out there. There's a lot of folks in the community that's been really gaining a lot of interest
Yes.
in this new
It's true.
40 Acres and a Mule. Have you got any feedback
Yes,
on that?
I definitely want to thank you for bringing that up, because there has been some people who just been reaching out, and we just want to give a big shout out to our Facebook family out there, because that's where I've been getting a lot of the hits of just people trying to chime in and just thank us for providing this information.
Absolutely,
So I want to
absolutely.
thank everybody out there in Facebook land.
Yes, yeah. My daughter, she's listening in, Miriam Jamari.
Miriam,
Yeah.
hello.
All the way from Las Vegas, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So she's a sweetheart, really smart girl. I'm really proud of her and all
And
those
I-
things that she's been doing.
It is funny that you said that. I didn't mean to cut you off, brother.
Uh-huh.
But as a parent, we are always proud of our children. I just hope she's proud of her dad.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. She's like, Daddy, I
Seriously.
saw you on TV
Good,
the other day,
good,
Daddy.
good,
Yeah,
good,
so
good.
that's good. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what we're going to cover today, we're going to touch on what we covered last week,
Mhm.
okay, or the week before last. We're just going to briefly touch on that. But today is on our series. We're going to cover the Harlem Renaissance.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So we talked about
We're going to cover the Harlem Renaissance and what that means to us and how that's going to help perpetuate the 40 Acres and a Mule,
Okay,
the
gotcha.
new 40 Acres and a Mule, what we've been talking about, and part of the series that I believe that is very crucial and for all Americans, not just for Black Americans, to truly understand. So first, we're going to just do a brief recap over last week. So when we looked at the 40 Acres and Mule, what we ended with, or the week before last, was the passing of the 13th Amendment. It was in 1865 by President Lincoln. And we discussed a little bit about how enslaved Africans at the time were disenfranchised, meaning that they didn't get the same economic opportunities that other privileged Americans received at the time. And so at the same time, a lot of those people did own their own businesses, and they did strive to achieve their dreams that they had, and they accomplished those goals. Okay, so when we're looking at the rise of the Harlem Renaissance, these were the sons and daughters of enslaved Africans, or grandsons and granddaughters. So they had firsthand experience with the cotton fields of the South and what slavery meant.
Gotcha.
So it's really important that we truly understand what that looks like. Okay, for one, after the Union had defeated the Confederate Army, and then the passage of 13 Amendments in 1865, that abolished slavery throughout all of the states. Okay, so that was the importance of Civil War. One of the important things about that. Okay, is that when the Union did succeed over the Confederate states, they were then under the total law.
Right.
Okay, there wasn't two different states. All right, so with Lincoln, after that he pushed forward the 13th Amendment, abolished slavery throughout all the states, and there was, on the contrary, there was another law that was just as insidious as slavery was during that time, and that was the Jim Crow laws.
Yes.
Okay, the Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that instituted what they call black code. Okay, so even though you were free as a freed American, not only just a black person, but you are a freed American now, they still instituted a law that was unconstitutional at that time, and that was, that gave rise to segregation. Okay, so that's where you had the colored drinking fountain, and then the colored bathrooms. You couldn't sit at the dining table. Okay, so all of those, there was other parts of that particular code that I, doing my research, was really interested in. And part of it was the idea that there was a type of law that kept you in perpetual debt. Sharecropping is a good example of that. You will never own that land, but you had to work it, and the more you work, the more money that the other person would make, but you would never get out of debt. Okay, so we have a modern day sharecropping. It's the credit cards.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I lost where your time was, your timeline was, because when you originally said that whole thing of keeping people in debt, that was the first thing that came to my mind, was the credit card.
That's exactly right. Absolutely.
So yeah.
You remember what we talked about the week before last? We said that the game hasn't changed. It just looks different.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a whole different type of sharecropping that's going on now, and that's debt. And part of it, when we're looking at the students that are coming out of the universities, they're in those student loan debt. Right. Now this is one peculiar scripture that I've read in the Bible a long time ago, and I never will forget it as a child, but it said that the lender, or the borrower, is servant to the lender. Thousands of years before even slavery was instituted, and this was already written.
Wow.
Isn't that something? You can still be free and still be a slave.
Yep.
And that's the reason why there's so many people that are dealing with different types. We talked about this also. One of the number one causes of divorce in America is because of finances.
You getting deep, bro. And I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, because you said something a few words ago about how we're still in slavery, and some of us don't see it. And you said something that just really made me raise my hand to where I see it, because we talk about, being in debt, and people think everything is good, but what happens when you're in a situation to where everything is going good and you got the credit going, but if you lose your job, all heck is gonna break out.
Yeah.
And so what happens when you're not happy with your place of employment, but you know that that's your backbone for you to survive?
Well, that's why we're getting into the new 40 Acres
Yes.
and New Mule. Okay.
Woo! Boy, you tricking my information out of me, but I love it because, like I said, just as well as wanting to help other people grow, I am so into trying to grow within myself.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't born knowing everything, and so I'm just so much into learning, and so wow, you just get my wheels a turning.
Sure, brother. And this is one of the things, whenever you feel like there's something on your heart or mind, speak it then, because this is exactly what we want people to do, right? Because people are truly afraid.
Yeah, I agree.
Of living day to day. They're afraid. They don't want to get up in the morning. They don't want to get out of bed. They're afraid of what the day is going to bring them because of this monster that we call debt, right? The creditors calling and everything else. That's not true freedom. That's not what liberty is all about. Right?
But see, and this is where some of us don't understand, I think, sometimes, the fact that it ain't even gotta. I'm looking at the big one. It don't even have to be the creditors calling right now. But it's the fear that some of us live in to where we don't want the creditors to call, so therefore we try our best not to put ourselves in that position, which is a good thing. But like I say, at the end of the day, there's people who are out there to where they dread getting up, going to their job every day.
Sure, absolutely.
But they know I have to go because I got to keep food on the table and the roof over my head.
Right.
So therefore, are you really living free?
That's the question, right? And that's the reason why we have this series.
So
it's because there is a way that you can live free. Okay, so we're going to look at how other people came out of that. This is the reason why we're going through this historical text here, all right? And looking into the future, because at the same time, when we're looking at the past, we're looking at a reflection of what the future is going to be, or what can be done, all right, to change things to make them look a little bit more, or to feel more comfortable for us, because right now we're living in discomfort.
Yes.
That's given rise to anxiety and depression, hopelessness, resentment and fear, like what we talked about.
Speak on, man. It's just like you just get my mind to thinking. So I just want to, try to chime in and just get people to see where we're going and how our history is just like we talked about the game. It just, and when I mean enhanced and things like that, it's just the things that have allowed the game to be enhanced, such as computers, cell phones, and all those kind of things.
Well, the computer is the new mule, okay, and that's where our series is going into next. All right, that's the mule. That's what's going to be able to plow that land that we're talking about.
Okay, so y'all better take notes on that. He done exposed the head of the game. So, which I totally agree. And that's, we briefly talked about this, and that's why when he was saying it made sense to me. Because I see the people who are living free, man. When now that I really think about it. And the people who are living free from this computer and this social media and all that kind of stuff. So
well, it's a new era, right? And so here's the deal. We had different, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but this is kind of taking me down the same path that I really wanted to go down anyhow. So there was different types of renaissances that took place.
Okay.
All right, this is the point for today's lesson. The Harlem Renaissance. There was a Renaissance that took place in the 14th century through the 17th century, and that was with Michelangelo, Donatello, Galileo, Martin Luther. It was the age of enlightenment and with the increase of knowledge, the increase of art, literature, and it was this whole big spread that took place amongst these other people who were really looking at their own talents and passions and then putting it so where people can begin to enjoy it. And when that happened, it opened up doors not only for them, but for people that were coming up after them too. The Harlem Renaissance in the same like manner took place, where these sons and daughters of enslaved Africans, right? I'm going to show you something here. There was a woman, her name was Oletha Walker. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Oletha Walker, and she, Langston Hughes called her the joy of Harlem, all right? And what was really the joy goddess of Harlem. What was interesting about her was that her mother was a seamstress, okay? And she built up an empire coming out of slavery. This woman was the first millionairist in Harlem that we know of, right? First one was a female, okay? She had a, so this is something because there's no limits, okay? The only limits that we put on us is the limits that we put on us, right? It doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're going to have hard times and trials and tribulations, things like that. There's always going to be something that's going to get in your way of you meeting your goals. But should that stop you from meeting your goals and your expectations that you have for your life? It didn't stop these people.
Nope.
And look at the climate that they were living in, right? She took on her grandmother's trade, the granddaughter did, or the daughter did, and she bought a house on one of the most prestigious plots of land in Harlem, and also she bought another mansion, I think it was on the Hudson River, right? And she entertained royalty at her house. The king of Liberia came to her house, you know, and she entertained these people, you know. And this is a woman way back in the early 20s. You know, this is right around during the time of women's suffrage taking place. That was just getting started.
Right.
Okay, but this woman had already far exceeded that, more than other men in her same field or during that time. I see your wheels turning again.
I'm just like going, you know, so, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, okay.
Continue on.
All right. So after the defeat of the Union Army in the Confederate Army, there was another law that was passed, and that was the Jim Crow laws. This was the exodus of Black Americans coming out of the South, the Deep South. Okay, so ironically, after the passage of the Jim Crow laws, there was another institute. It was the Ku Klux Klan during that time. It was another terrorist group, right, that went around and you know, what we're familiar with. They terrorized African Americans and other people too, but particularly African Americans during that time. So even though we were free, we still were not living in liberty.
Exactly.
Okay. What is curious about this group was that blacks couldn't find the justice that they were entitled to underneath the law, the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights. They couldn't find that justice because most of the Klan members that were there at that time were our politicians, policemen, firemen, right? Judges. Those were the men that were hiding behind those white sheets. Okay? So how could we find justice when the people who are there to protect our rights, our civil liberties, were doing things that were unjust?
Wow.
Now, there's something else that I would like to bring up too. You know, when we're looking at the Civil War and at that time, was that Black Americans. This is something I really enjoy reading. Black Americans fought in every American war up to the present time. Every one of them, right? the Boston Massacre of 1717, Crispus Attucks died. He was killed, okay, because he was protesting the British Army, okay, the king and his monarchy. I believe it was King George at the time. He was protesting them along with other colonists. Okay, he was a longshoresman, so he worked those long hours and he knew what it was about.
Right.
So when they said taxation without representation is tyranny, that was something that he held true to himself because he was working hard.
Exactly.
So why should he be taxed for something, right, that he has no control over? Okay, that he himself cannot see the benefit behind it, but he was giving his hard-earned money away. So now they're sending in the soldiers, you know, the king's goons, if you will, to institute laws that were unjust. So he stood up against that, and he was shot and killed in the war, the Boston Massacre. That's what started the American Revolution. Okay, and we can go on from the American War, the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, special ops, covert wars that we don't even have any knowledge of, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Kosovo, you know, the list goes on. And all of us, black folks, fought in those wars.
That's interesting, man. I think I vaguely heard that somewhere before, but I thank you for just kind of sharing that with me to educate me on that. So, but I thought I heard that somewhere. I remember somebody was saying that.
Every war that we fought, that America has been in, we've fought and died for the idea of liberty. Okay, this is one thing that we that Frederick Douglass said, and he was really proud when the infantry of the Civil War, the black men, and when the black men were fighting in the Civil War, he says that once let the black man get upon his person the brass letter of the U.S. Let him get an eagle on his button, and a musket on his shoulder, and bullets in his pockets. There is no power on earth that can deny that he has earned the right to citizenship. Right? We're taking bullets, okay, for the idea of freedom is still being called a nigger.
Yeah.
When you come back home, you're treated as a second-class citizen. All right. What was interesting in World War I, World War II, is that many blacks who went over to Europe stayed over there. Okay, because they were treated as a human being. They stayed over there, and so you know, and this is part of the connection that we have with the Harlem Renaissance, is because of that same culture, you know, of music and art and literature. It was tied to Europe. Okay, and that's where we get a greater appreciation. A lot of our artists during the Harlem Renaissance went back to Europe and Paris because they were treated fairly, and they reaped some of the benefits, and people were really enthused about it. And I would argue that a lot of the British rock bands, and a lot of them were heavily influenced by our jazz musicians, and they'll tell you themselves too. As far as we talked a little bit about Chuck Berry, you know, how he was, they called him the father of rock and roll. Okay, and I didn't know that until I did my research.
Okay.
Right, but all, you know, the Grateful Dead and Rolling Stones, you know, the Beatles, all of these different bands who are very prominent, really took a lot of what they were influenced heavily, if not all of their musical talent by these black musicians. And a lot of it started way back in 1920s because we had a lot of the people there who were brilliant. I mean, Duke Ellington, for heaven's sakes, right? Big band leaders like these people here. Who orchestrated a whole band and were able to produce great masterpieces at the time. And our art and literature was second to none, and a lot of people really appreciated that. Claude McKay was a black artist during that period of time, and what was influential or controversial about his art form was the fact that he did many art pieces, and these art pieces had religious connotations in them, but at the same time, they were black images.
Hey, I see some up there, but I can't read it. Is there somebody with a question, or they just comment, or what we got over there?
That's my daughter. She
Okay.
said, she said, "Daddy, you look great."
Okay.
Yes. So, again, yeah, if you're out there listening in TV in radio land, so just go ahead and shoot us any type of questions that you may have. Anything that I'm covering that you want more clarity on, or some other kind of comments that you may have about what we're covering today, feel free to chime in.
Yes, indeed. Or even give us a call at 530-532-8854.
So one of the things, Bobby, that we could take home from that is the fact that these folks really pushed forward for the idea of their own passion, their own citizenship as an individual. Okay, they didn't live in perpetual fear. All right. Another note. What we're going to look at is the idea that during the 20s was the rise of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so this is where, with Andrew Carnegie, Vanderbilt, the Rockefeller dynasty, all of these great men who built empires during that time were really instrumental in what the financial fabric of America is to look like. Okay, so there was other people who were part of that same financial train that was navigating our soils here in America. And there was a African American oil man during that time. You don't hear too much about him, but he was an oil tycoon in his own right. And there was different ones, particularly the exodus out of the South because of the Jim Crow laws, with African Americans there that were trying to do good work there, pushed them into the east, on the East Coast to New York. Before Harlem was, the people there were from Irish descent, some Native American people, and Jewish folks. But once black people started to come into that neighborhood, and this was a prominent neighborhood at the time, prominent culture. Once black folks started coming in there, then they left. Okay, so they didn't want to integrate with black people at the time, and so black folks then started to take over, for the lack of a better term, some of the more prominent neighborhoods because they were middle class citizens at the time. Okay, so they pushed for education. A lot of them did. Booker T. Washington thought that the American Negro would benefit by working his way up to the top in economic growth, whereas W.E. Du Bois saw it a little bit differently. So he believed that the black man and the black woman in this country, should enlighten themselves through education. I believe in a hybrid of both of them, and so I think they're both equally right in a lot of ways. But we had two big schools of thought, and then there were some people who leaned more toward Booker T. Washington. There were some people that leaned more towards Dr. Du Bois. However, we saw a great awakening that was happening during this period of time, and one of the things that I found that was really interesting is what George Santaya said. And he says this. He says that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. Okay? Those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So the big reason why we're covering these things is that we don't want to repeat some of the same tragedies that happened in the past, but we can start to see that it's starting to take place a little bit nowadays. Okay, with the institution of the credit system. All right, and that happened in 1912, I believe it was, or around 1912. I can't remember exact date. That was with Woodrow Wilson during the time. And what happened during that period of time was the institution of the Federal Reserve Bank, and that was off Jekyll Island, right? With the institution of the Federal Reserve Bank, it changed how money was shaped in America for good. The American system was no longer backed by silver or gold at that period of time. Okay, up until 1971, during Nixon's time, he took it off the gold standard. But the introduction of the Federal Reserve Bank really gave precedence to how money was to be instituted in America. So now the Federal Reserve Bank prints our money. It's not. That bank is a separate institution. It's not part of the government. A lot of people don't understand that. It's right there in Washington, D.C., but it's not part of the government. It's an independent banking system. Okay, so the great titans at the time did this purposely so they can control the money, right? So they can print however much money they need or America needs, and then loan it back to America with interest. Okay, through the Treasury. All right. So the people who control the finances here in the United States is the Federal Reserve. Okay, bankers. Now you have a small percentage of people who are the less than 1% of the population, 2%, who control the majority of the money. And when they control the money, they control the politics. Okay, they control who comes into power and things of that nature. Because they can lobby for it. But with the money, we just don't have enough money to lobby for the person that we really want to be in power, right? But when you're talking about tens of millions of dollars changing hands, like that, then they can influence politicians and things of that nature. So that's why we saw that happen during Rockefeller's time, and different ones, who influence a lot of political leaders to balance, to weigh the scales more into their favor, when it came to financial security and building of their own empire and their own kingdom. So they had law behind them, and this happened with the Federal Reserve. So now what you have is a system that the founding fathers did not want in place. We were trying to get away from that. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson who really instituted an idea of America owning their own money. Okay, them printing our own money. When we do that, then that means that there's no limit to the increase in the wealth that we can have. But once we start to give that power away to someone else, they control, the whole country. Okay, and that was what the Rothschild said, is that I care not who is in power, something to that effect. I care not who is in power, but when one controls banking system, it doesn't matter to them either way. It can be Republican or Democrat.
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter, if they control the system. And so, with that being said, this was during that period of time of the Harlem Renaissance. They were just now starting to feel a little bit of it, but they were very successful during that time. They called them the dainties at the time. These were the men that were coming out in their fur coats, and they had their really nice cars and really nice clothes. Money was coming in really good. And this was the Roaring '20s. Everything was going really well for everyone. Up until 1929, and that was the Great Depression that took place, and it collapsed the whole economy for a period of time. But before then, there was we were doing really well financially. Everything was going well. The stock market was booming, and everything else to that nature. Okay, so to back up just a little bit, when I went to Washington, D.C., I had a chance to see the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I saw for myself the spirit that kind of came off or resonated off that papyrus paper, that thick paper. I mean, and if any of the Americans out there, gets the opportunity to go out there and see the Declaration of Independence, I highly recommend it. Because this is what was penned by our founding fathers when you're looking at it.
Right.
such a beautiful thing. And then at the time, I saw the Bill of Rights also, and during that period of time, the Magna Carta was there. So this was the precursor to the Declaration of Independence, away from Great Britain. I went to the Vietnam War Memorial, the wall. I saw 58,000 of those names there of people who were killed or missing in the Vietnam War. Also saw the Arlington Cemetery, where the dead lay from the Civil War up until the present time. 164 acres of land, with all these servicemen and women who died.
Mm-hmm.
And then, most of all, one of the things that stood out to me the most when I went back to visit was I stood at the place where Dr. King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. Right there in Lincoln Memorial.
Wow. Okay.
And it is indeed hollow ground. I can't, really speak on my feelings when I experienced that, because this was a man who was a grandson. He was a grandson of enslaved Africans. He was a son of enslaved Africans, right? With him standing there and giving the "I Have a Dream" speech, he had behind him all of his ancestors, right? They're standing behind him, supporting him, and smiling in my mind's eye, right?
Wow.
You had all these people from every denomination, every race, every creed, every color, listening to the speech, right? A prophet in his own right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. White men and white women were there, to support him. Folks from all over the world were there to support him, and he said, "I have a dream."
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I'm picturing just being. That's just amazing, man.
It is.
It really is.
Because it changed the landscape of this country, right? It really did. It changed of this country, and not only this country, but the world in itself.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So we wouldn't be, I don't believe, we wouldn't be where we're at today if it had not been for Dr. King and the people that came before him who influenced his vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? So one of the things that I believe is really important when we're looking at the Harlem Renaissance and we're connecting our past to our future is what was said in the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Isn't that beautiful? Right? So this is more than just some white men coming together, right, that succeeded from the British power.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this was something greater, and this is something that even when we were considered 3/5 of a person, we still were entitled to, because it was something greater than what people believed who that applied to.
Exactly.
Okay? I believe that it was like what he was saying, it was what they said here. These truths are self-evident, and they're endowed by their Creator. That means that as a human being, you have these rights. Nobody owes us anything, okay, except for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those three things. And when something gets in the way of that, then that's when that uprising starts to happen. Okay. So when people began to really take on these different types of this philosophy here, and when it was starting to get in the way of them, proceeding to experience all of those three truths, then that gave rise to the civil rights movement, okay, and voting rights and things like that, and women's suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at a few things. this is something that I think will really help tie us into where we're going at with the new 40 Acres and the Mule, is that for one, freedom doesn't come free, right? We have to ask ourselves now, what are we doing with our time when we considering all of the atrocities that have taken place from the past and the things that we have experienced, all of the hardships that we have went through as a people, that other folks of other religions and other denominations have sacrificed and died because they didn't believe that we were unequal. They believed that we were equal. White men believe that, and white women believe that. And they were hiding slaves in their homes, right? And some of them were killed and lynched, right?
That's true. That's true.
Because they just could not believe that we were unequal, that we should be treated unfairly. They just didn't have that belief in their heart. So when we're looking at the people that laid down their lives for us, and we're living today in a day-to-day existence, what are we doing with our time? What are we doing with the freedom that we have been granted? What are you doing with the gifts and talents that you have? Are you putting them to work for you? Are you making a difference in someone's life? Are you planting a seed of love in someone's life? It doesn't have to be anything, huge. It could be as big as a phone call, or visiting the sick, or something of that nature, right? Or making amends to people that we have wronged. What is the life lesson here? Is it forgiveness? Is it moving forward? All those different types of things that a lot of people struggle with. And it's really, really tough, to try to put these things together when we're bombarded with different types of oppression that happens in our lives, right? And you brought that up too. A lot of people are just living in fear. They're so afraid of moving forward. They're so afraid of getting up in the morning, because they're just so tackled with this tremendous, debt and other things that are getting in the way of them truly fulfilling their life purpose, right? So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at one of the things that can set us free, all right, is this new 40 Acres and New Mule. So I brought it up. Now we're living in the time of this increase in knowledge that we had before. Okay, as far as the renaissance of the old masters in the 14th century, the Harlem Renaissance that took place in around the 1920s is when it first started to take off, and now we're living in a time of the computer age where it doesn't see any color. It doesn't see anything besides ones and zeros.
Say that again, and listeners, I hope you guys are starting to listen, because this is where it's finna get, to me, it's just finna get serious. I really appreciate the history because it let me know and even understand more where we're gonna go, where all this stuff come from, and just like what we talked about, and we keep saying how the game haven't changed.
No,
it really hasn't.
Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, now we have to just try to evolve. I mean, if we don't evolve, then we're going to be stuck in the past,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
If we are not knowledgeable of what's going to happen, what's happening now, then we're going to be stuck in a place where we're not moving forward. Okay, so let's look at we're going to touch into next week's lesson a little bit here, and that's the power of the computer and the idea of e-commerce. Okay, so one of the things that these people did was they had a passion. They were something that they were passionate about, something that they were really good at, and that they were talented with. Okay, if it was Miles Davis, it was his trumpet. If it was John Coltrane, it was his saxophone. Claude McKay, it was his brush, and it was his pen. If it was Du Bois, it was his literary mind. Okay, Duke Ellington, it was his gift of being able to conduct an orchestra. And people, when they saw folks living in this type of, to them it wasn't hard, it wasn't difficult, okay, to do the things that they did, getting there, the practice of getting there, was a challenge, because they didn't just pick up Miles didn't just pick up a trumpet and start playing, and then all these masterpieces, right? It took some practice and things like that.
Exactly.
So in the same like manner, the passions that we have, the things that we're good at, okay, what we're good at, we can now put that on the web. Okay, we can put that on the web, and it can be the engine to our freedom. It can make us free financially. All right, it's not going to come like all of a sudden. Some people, it could happen that way.
I'm smiling and I'm laughing. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
But I don't know if you saw that one movie, Don't Be a Menace, and when they do something, they talk about message. I just wanted to say that so bad after you just said it, because I hope people are hanging on to every word you say, but if not, I hope they're catching the real major stuff of the internet. You can put your expertise and what you're all about on the internet.
Yeah.
You don't need nobody else to do that for you. This is things that we can be doing for ourselves.
So true, yeah.
So I just had to
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit more. You don't have to have anyone to do it for you, right? Before, it was a brick and mortar building. Okay, so like you needed a loan, you needed to have good credit, you needed to go in there, present your business plan, to the bank, and then hopefully they give you this business loan that you're going to have to pay interest on. That's the reason why I'm bringing up the Federal Reserve, because that's another form of slavery, is interest. You can never get out of it. That's why these things that we're talking about today are going to help you to be able to pay off your debt. All right, all the things that you're struggling with, you can put your passions in a place where you put them online, and then you begin to profit from it. All right, and I'm not just saying it just to to say that you're going to be a millionaire or anything like that. Could possibly happen.
Right.
There's a ton of them out there now.
And Martrell, there's something else I like that you just said, because a moment ago I just defined it at your expertise and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the way you put it. You said your passion.
Your passion, brother. That's
just think to be able to earn a living off the things that you're passionate about.
It's freedom.
And remember a moment ago I was talking about there's some of us who don't like getting up and going to work in the morning. So just think, if your work was your passion.
It's your passion. Like, it just didn't seem like work to you, right? Can you imagine this? Can you imagine going to the Bahamas, right? Doing your work on your computer. Same work that you would do anywhere else, right? And still accomplish the same goals that you would have in a place that you like. If you want to go to Africa, you could. That's part of my vision, is to go back to Mufangano Island, where my grandparents lived, my forefathers lived, and begin to do work over there, because I'm passionate about it. So the things that I'm wanting to put forth, that I have a vision and goals and dreams for my own life, is some of the things that I'm doing now. This right here could have never been possible years ago. Okay, where we have literally the whole world open to us at this moment.
Yes, sir.
The world, not just Orville.
You're absolutely correct.
Right? I have my daughter listening from Las Vegas.
And when my son was on there a couple of weeks ago, he was in Chicago. And then the biggest thing about that is not even just through Facebook, through these airways, through streaming and all that. People could hear us throughout the world, even if they don't go on Facebook. They still can hear our voice.
And now just imagine if you were to take the things that you have in your heart, that that you're good at, that you're passionate about, and that you begin to develop it in a way that you put it online, right? To open it up to the world, so that you now have a following behind you of the things that you're really good at. If it's a cupcake business, if it's a I don't know, some type of blog cast that you may want to do.
But even in something as simple as, and I remember being in school where there's class clowns.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a passion about making people laugh, you don't have to be in the living room trying to entertain your family. You could go on the web and attempt to entertain millions of people.
Well, there's people now that are on YouTube who that's their living.
That's what I mean. I didn't want to jump ahead of what you wanted to talk about, but people, this is that new 40 acres and that new mule that we're trying to expose to you guys. This is it.
This is it. And it's just so awesome, and I brought that up, that Gary Vaynerchuk talked about that. This is the only time in history where, I don't know if it's going to come around again. Okay, because this is the new gold rush. This is the new land grab of being able to be exposed to millions and millions of people. There's some folks on YouTube now that have 10 million people that have watched their videos, or 3 million people, 100,000 followers, things like that. And could you imagine being bigger than NBC and ABC and not even have to go for an interview?
Exactly.
Right? There's people on there that do the DJing thing. They talk about new equipment that's coming out and things like that, and how to work that equipment. And then they give different tracks on what's really successful.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then people are following them. People are really listening in on that. So all that we're talking, all that that I'm explaining here in this, our historical text, is to give us reference of where we've been and how the times have changed and where we're at now. That we ought not let anything step in our way of getting to the place that we want to get to in the future. All right, because anything at this point now, anything is possible. Is it easy? No. Right? It takes a learning curve. I had to learn how to do YouTube and things like that, and Facebook was really a challenge to me. And because I had to learn the language, learn what that's all about. It's because it's a new type of language that's out there now. Okay? There's a new type of culture that's out there now. Right? Now, if we're not privy to it, or if we don't get precedence to it, we just get further and further left behind.
Yeah.
If we get scared of the computer and scared of the typewriter and things like that, it just puts us that much more behind, and we become more obsolete. Okay, and then that's where people run into a problem with having to go to work every day. That 9-to-5 job, and be stressed out because they feel like there's no other options.
Yep.
Right? Now I'm saying something that a lot of people kind of are afraid to talk about. They're afraid to say it. Because they're living in fear of losing their job and things like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I'm not saying that you go out and quit your job or anything like that, but what I am saying is that with this new 40 acres and this new mule, is that you have the opportunity to be free. You don't have to live in fear. You can keep that job. There's people that do full-time work doing that thing, and they're doing their part-time work, with this new computer age.
It's just being smart about what you and how you do it, because something that you just mentioned and about the whole thing of like the YouTube thing and how people are showing people how to do things. So it just made me think, man, dude, if you're so passionate about this DJ stuff, why can't you start you a little blog and things like that, showing people how to mix? Yeah, okay. Showing people how to mix and just little things like that, to where if I'm so passionate about it and really trying to be free, to where, to me, freedom, to where, especially when it comes to work, and I gotta say that the opinions voiced on this program do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of KOYO, its staff, volunteers, board of directors, or its underwriting. To me, especially when it comes to financial, I don't think you can get as free as working for yourself. You see what I mean? And that's what I'm just looking at, and what I'm just gathering here just within myself, to where, I say I like DJing and I, have my DJ business, but at the end of the day, if I'm, say, not satisfied or really looking for that financial freedom, why am I not possibly investing in myself?
Well, that's the best. Listen, those are listeners who are listening out there on Facebook and to the rest of the world. The very best investment that you can ever make is the investment into your own self. Okay? That's the best investment that you can make. You can, yes, it's possible that you can be your own boss. It's possible that you can, live in the passion and the desires,
Mm-hmm.
the things that you have, the dream that you have envisioned for yourself. It is possible to do those things. But it comes with sacrifice.
Yes,
It comes with a certain amount of risk that's involved with it.
and I think that's where some of us we get afraid.
Of course. It's scary. It is. This is
the fear of the unknown is what they call it.
It's scary. No, I wasn't do that. Okay, because you got a house note to pay, you got child
Yes,
support
that's
to
right.
pay, you got all these different debts and
Wow.
obligations to pay, right? That is terrifying to be able to say, okay, I'm going to let this go, and I want to be able to put my whole dreams and passions, to work, right? The smart thing to do, in my opinion, is to keep what you got going on there,
Right.
and then you're going to have to put in that extra work and that extra time. When you want to fall asleep and go, get some good shut eye, right?
And I think that, yeah, because that's what it is. Because that's the whole thing. Is you don't want to cut off the right hand when it's feeding you, just to go try to make the left hand happy. So you have to. It might have to, and it is about putting in those extra hours. And just like what you said, when that time comes, when you think you want to go get a little bit of shut eye, maybe it might be like, but am I investing in myself?
Yeah. That's what, I met Mike Tyson in Las Vegas. Really, really nice guy, man. I mean, really humble, big man. Yeah, and I said to him, Jim, I really appreciate all the hard work that you've done throughout the years, and then he took my hand, and then he put it against his chest, and he kind of just, he kind of bowed and said, "Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate you for that." That really touched me. It meant a whole lot to me.
Wow.
And we were just having some small talk, but I'll never forget, my ex-girlfriend was there with me at the time, and we were talking about it, and gosh, it was just such a memorable experience being there with Mike Tyson. And if he's listening, I'm going to give him a shout out too.
Yes, sir.
And so one of the things that he said when I was looking at his documentary was that what made him really good, it wasn't just Customato, just different ones that was in his life. Cuss was a big part of it.
Right.
But it was the idea that he said that when he would get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and go jogging, go running, he knew that his opponents were asleep. And he wanted the leg up on his opponent. So he got up. He got up at that time to go running, and that's something that kept him, even built up more of his confidence, in the ring. He was a beast in the ring, just a savage, but what.
That's deep, man.
The things that he felt to be competitive amongst the very best, because any of those men during that time, it's the golden era of boxing. One of the golden era, I think, the 1980s, and was a good era, and Ali's time, of course. Jack Johnson, but with Mike Tyson in particular, all those men could have been heavyweight champions, all of them, and they were just that good. But to be competitive,
Right.
you had to do something that your competition was not doing, and that's the same thing with us. If we're, if we want this new 40 Acres and New Mule, if we want to get out of this rut that we're in, we're going to have to do something that's going to take a little bit of sacrifice and to move out of the things that we're comfortable with doing. Yeah, you can be worn out. You get off of work at midnight and you're worn out. You don't want to do anything but go to sleep.
Yeah.
But it's just that little extra 2 hours, 3 hours that you're putting into your own passion, right? doing your research and doing things to that nature, that's going to give you that much more of an edge than your competitor, the person that you're with, and studying who your competitor is, you know, when you're out there. Now, this is the other part of this new financial age and things like that, in the computer age, is that there's not a whole lot of talk about competition out there. You know, they're not really looking at it as it was back in the 80s when you had these big corporations and things like that, and other people, you know, other businesses, when they're putting their, you know, two businesses side by side and they're trying to outdo the other person. It's a little bit different now. Okay, we're finding more of a supportive network of people that are trying to push each other forward. Yeah.
And Montreal, that makes so much sense, because I just envisioned when I heard you say that, as, so you think about this YouTube video age and what's going on and people having followers. People not looking at it as a competition, because I'm an individual, and so what I do, you're not going to be able to do because you're not me.
True, and let me take that a little bit further. Is the fact that I can be a DJ and you could be a DJ, right?
Because we're going to have our own different styles.
We have our own different styles. I can come to you and say, hey, brother Bobby, look, this is what I found here. This is this new system here set up, right? And I think this is going to be able to help you do this part of, you know, your whatever it is that you're doing, okay? And now we're helping each other. Our fans are looking at us interact with one another, and that's bringing it
more.
It's even more. So now you have your fans that are looking at me, my fans that are looking at you,
wow.
right? And then they're coming together and they're talking, and it's just building up a bigger community. All right. In my radio blog is what I call Uhusani Watu. It's a Swahili word phrase that means it's kind of like the big village, right? The greater good, everybody working together. This is the African philosophy, you know, that I incorporate into my own private practice. It's not me against you any longer. It's what can we do together, okay? Because there's so much 40-acre real estate out there on the World Wide Web.
Yep,
You cannot. There's no limits to it. Okay. There's no like little patch of land that I have to kind of section off now.
And it's funny that something you talked about as far as like the future. Is there's no limit to it yet?
Yes.
And so this is the importance of getting into it, just like everything else, to where, you know, things started flooding out. I'm not saying that this would happen, but we've seen similar things like this happen in the past, to where the getting is only good for so long before it gets tapped out, and then this new situation happened to where this become in existence, and now you got to learn this whole new game.
Yes. Well, part of it is the corporate structure. Okay. What are the big corporates? Because they have the money and they got the power, right? Right now things are free. You know, you can go on to Facebook and everything else.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
There we go.
When is it that the big corps are coming in to start taking over these
There we
type
go.
of things?
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for because it expanded on that a little bit more, to where, just like you said, some of the things on the internet is free. And I'm finna give people a perfect example. I was working at another radio station where they used to have a video camera in there, and we used to stream live the radio shows and everything like that. Mm-hmm. Since coming to this radio station and trying to implement that stream, it costs now. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? So if we're not taking advantage of this now, when, say, one day the light bulb come on and we're ready to take advantage of it, and now all of a sudden there's a cost involved, now if you don't have that money to pay for that cost, here's another barrier that you have to jump over.
That's absolutely correct. Right now is an opportunity for you to do what you need to do free. Okay, right now.
So, just something for us to just think about, man. It's
absolutely.
Just, wow.
So if we're looking at the robber barons of the 1920s, with like where I mentioned Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie, they took advantage of the laws that were not in place. Okay, that's why they had these oil derricks right next to each other. Okay, because the laws were not in place at the time.
It is. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was watching I don't know if it was some news show, but they had mentioned that social media laws is behind the laws that regulate social media is behind.
Yeah.
You know, and when I heard that, I envisioned, because nowadays people could just take out their camera and start videotaping, and you can't do nothing about it. Sooner or later, because of hopefully I'm wrong about this, but I just been seeing sooner or later things are going to be happening to where there's going to be laws in place that's going to start regulating how you can just grab your cell phone and start videotaping people.
Well, see, that's one of the things that why we mentioned, you know, that philosopher who talked about learning from the past. If we don't learn from the past, and then we're bound to repeat it, right? Some of the tragedies of the past.
So it just, you know, just another one of those things for us to just kind of think about.
Absolutely. When we're looking at, just to touch on that just a little bit more, yes, so Facebook right now, we're streaming live free. Okay, they can come and tap into free. So this is the thing, is that poor people can now afford it.
That's what I was trying to get. Thank you.
Right.
Bring that up.
Poor people who could not go to the bank, get a loan, build up their own, you know, structure, things like that. They have it in their heart. They have the passion in their heart. You know, they do want it, but now they have all these barriers in place. Right now, you don't have to have it. Okay? Right now, you can be able to do those things that there's all kinds of stuff. I learned about organic gardening. You know, they have some people on there that you know, teach about organic gardening. They have people on there that teach you about your how to build you know, different furniture, you know, how to reupholster. I found an antique chair that I really wanted. You know, I just looked on YouTube, and then there was a guy there that was showing me how to do it professionally. You know, all I had to do was just go get the material and the tools, and then follow the instructions how he did it.
Exactly, man. I'm serious. It's just like I said, Montreal. When we had lunch and you introduced me to this, the light bulb, it just went off. That's why we're sitting there, because it made so much sense to me, to where it's just a new wave. And I'd rather try to get this information out to hopefully change the mindset of people who just sitting around waiting on that 40 acres and a mule, and it's not happening.
It's not happening. No, that's
people might want to throw that out there, because I was even sharing something in the beginning when we started this. I did some research to where Congress put a clause out there to make sure that wasn't nobody finna be able to have no reparation to come back and say, we were promised 40 acres of the mule, where is it at? There's documents out there that Congress signed and filled out to where we can't go back and say, my forefathers and ancestors was promised all this 40 acres of the mule. It's not happening.
No, it's not.
I don't know. I mean, so we can stop using that. We can, you know, and if people are joking, saying, where's my 40 acres of the mule, that's fine if you're joking, but if you're being serious about it, it's not happening.
Yeah. Why even give your time to jokes when you can be able to do this now, right? While people are like kind of burning time, okay, they could be earning a living.
Yes, sir.
Right now, you know, and I'm gonna tell you how important that statement I just made, you know, as far as, you know, joking and things like that, and burning their own time. Right now, Amazon, since I talked to you last about the book thing, you know, selling used books on Amazon, you know, which is another great business. They already passed it just I think it was last month or month before last now, where they're charging people for charging fees for them keeping the books in storage now. All right, so you can't do the same things that you did before. They have to sell it. You understand what I'm saying? This is how things change just that quick. Whereas people who were making millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars selling books on Amazon, that time has passed now. You have to now change with the times and change with the new laws. There might be a time where you're not going to get this opportunity where, you know, Montrell Jamari, LMFT,
Serious, man.
is talking to you on this radio show for free.
I'm telling you, that's what people. And man, that's just amazing, because that just really just resonated with me of everything, part of what we was just talking about, how that quick Amazon saw all these people who they connected with this little system that they put together to make money off to sell used books. Somebody through, to me, and this is my opinion, somebody through Amazon seen, wait a minute, these people are making a lot of money selling these used books, and here we are storing them for nothing.
Well, they store them for something, but they want more of a something.
Well, okay,
now.
yeah. So whether if it was something in the beginning, obviously they seen that what we're doing, people are benefiting from it, so let us benefit a little bit more off them.
Yeah, and it was costing them money for their people to go in and track these books down that've been in there for a year, and so forth and so on.
And it's just part of business, man.
It's part of business. It makes sense. But what we're sharing today is that those type of laws are coming into place. Okay, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yes, sir.
So the space and opportunity for us to be able to capture this new 40 acres and a mule is just kind of trickling down to a little bit smaller and smaller sizes.
And that's what I was meaning when I was just saying, to where we better get on board now, because just like everything else, I think about before YouTube even got big, the gentleman in Chico, and I shared this, he told me, man, he was just really into the internet stuff, and he was just like, man, let's just go around Chico and start videotaping stuff and posting it on YouTube so we can get some followers. We can get paid from it.
Oh, yeah.
Dude told me this years ago. Now look where YouTube is at.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's just, I don't know if, I don't know if YouTube is going, I hope that it is, because I'm a big YouTube fan. I really like what they're doing out there. Because you can get so much different information, that you otherwise wouldn't get, through mainstream. I like some of the news and things like that that's on there. I don't believe, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the same. I don't know if it's going to be controlled by big corporations. I don't know if government is going to come in and start regulating that and start censoring it a little bit more. I hope that it would be a more free platform for people to be able to go out and do the things that I believe are part of our civil liberties, as an American, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As long as we're not hurting anybody, we're not breaking any laws or anything like that. We're not cheating anyone. That we can be able to go out and do those things. But that time is starting to decrease, because of some of the things that I'm seeing now that are coming into commonplace. Amazon was a big one. That was a huge one, right? So now, what do we do with those new laws? Well, we have to kind of see exactly what, if we're taking the book example, we have to see what books are going to sell within 6 months, or a book that's going to take a year that you could potentially profit off of. You have to start looking at the numbers now a little bit more closely, or is that a viable business now? Those type of things. So when we're looking at where we're going into the future, part of the things that we have to be aware of is that things typically change, and laws typically come into place where we can't do those things any longer. I brought up the Rockefeller, the robber barons and the Rockefellers, when they took advantage of the different laws that were not in place at the time with the different oil derricks. They accused John D. Rockefeller of monopoly, of monopolizing the oil industry, in which he did have a stranglehold on them. He was a ruthless and shrewd businessman, and he got that from his father, Devil Bill, who they called Devil Bill. Oh, yeah, he was a snake oil salesman. And he cheated John out of a little bit of money, and he said, "Well, this is going to teach you how not to trust anybody."
Oh, okay, one of those.
Right. And his mother was a staunch Baptist. She was really faithful in her Baptist and religious beliefs. So he had a hybrid of both, right? He really gave heavily to the church. He was really an advocate for women's suffrage and women's rights. And he also, a lot of people don't know, is that he built the first historical black colleges for women, was Spelman College. you know. So he did a whole lot of great things. When they said that he could not monopolize the oil industry at that time, he was just super smart. He went to they took him through court and everything else, and so they broke up his whole conglomerate of his oil empire, and that's where we get Chevron, BP, Exxon, Mobil, and everything else besides Standard Oil.
Exactly.
Okay, so Standard Oil was broken off into these.
Okay.
When they thought that they were going to destroy his power, it just made him the richest man in America after that, because he owned shares in Chevron, Exxon, Mobil, and everything else. So it just multiplied what he had. Right? He was smart about it. He looked at the future and he saw what was coming. Okay, and so he owned all of that. That's why he couldn't be stopped in that area. In the same way, when we're looking at this new 40 acres and a mule, we have to understand what's the possibility of coming down the pipeline.
Right.
And it's preparing ourselves for the future, for those things that may potentially get here. It's being smart about business.
Okay, speaking of that, to where I'm just hearing some noise out there, which let me know that the dance class is probably finna get ready to make some noise. So let's do a couple of things. Let's kind of give folks your information for one, and then and I do have to apologize, but we're gonna have to postpone this for a couple of weeks because I'm kind of gonna be out of the office for the next couple of weeks. But I definitely want us to finish this, and I kind of want to promote it as we come back in a couple of weeks. But give folks your information on how to listen to your podcast and all that good information.
Well, I really appreciate you, first of all, Bobby, for having me on this series and doing this. I know that a lot of people are gaining a whole lot from it, and I'm praying that folks would continue to listen in onto this particular series.
Yes, sir.
You can reach me at montrealjamari.com. That's MONTRIELJAMARI.com. You can go online there. You can book a personal appointment with me. I have therapy sessions, and I have coaching sessions also. If you want to learn more about this 40 acres, I can help you with that. Having issues with relationships, or things that may be going on in your life, any of those type of issues with anxiety, depression, anything that has to do with that, you can book a session with me, and then we can see if we're a good fit for each other. And that's at my website, www.montrealjamari.com. You can call me on the phone at 1-800-895-6926. It's 1-800-895-6926. You can also catch me at my Lion's Share blogcast. It's on Podbean, Podbean. And you can listen in free.
Yes, indeed.
Free. There, you just type in MVJ, that's M, V as in Victor, J, Inner Strength Coaching, and then you can look at some of the free things that I offer there. I also have my office space in Chico, so if you want to see me one-on-one, I'm there at 1430 Suite 4C in Chico, California, off of East Avenue.
All right, so we want to thank everybody very much. Anything over there, they comment over there that we might want to?
Well, I just see that people have been tuning in, coming in there, and so we certainly appreciate all of you that are out there in the Facebook world and listening in on the radio.
Okay, so we'll be back the first Friday in August, and same time, 1 o'clock, and we'll continue on with this conversation of the new 40 acres and the new mule.
Now, Bobby, is there a way that they can go on and see the archives of?
Yes, I'm hoping that is available and fixed. I haven't heard back from our IT guy, but you should be able to go to our archives on KOYO.FM to listen to our shows, but also you can listen to them on Facebook as well, because they're all on Facebook, on our Facebook at African American Family and Cultural Center. So like us there, and then you can hear all those shows, and actually you can see us live, or you can just kind of just let it play while you're in your house doing some things. Good stuff, and like I said, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. It's about taking care of ourselves, so I just got to go take care of myself, and it'll be all good. In the neighborhood, let's do a little bit of Common and John Legend.
And also, I'm going to make this into a book. So this new 40 Acres and New Mule is going to be in a book. And so
Awesome.
Just be on the lookout for that, because I think it'll be really helpful to you. I'll have it up there online, pretty reasonable price for
Right
everyone.
on. Yes, sir. Good stuff. Anyway, until next time, we're out of here. You can go ahead and hit finish.